So 4 hours later, or 10 hours later, or 10,000 years later, as you like to put it, we just watched the Ten Commandments, the Cecil DeMille movie, and I am here not with Jessica, she's stepping out just for the video, but I have TJ Lunde with me here today, former colleague and a former film buff as well. Right. Can review Ten Commandments with me, and it starred a number of you said star actors from the time, right?
Yeah. Charlton Heston, Yul Butler. It's his last name's hard to pronounce.
Yul Butler.
Yeah, he was from Magnificent Seven, the original.
But basically, this is the filming version of the Moses story that just about all of us would be familiar with, straight from the Bible. All about how all the people in Egypt are under the oppression from the Pharaoh. And that they need someone to deliver. They need someone to deliver them. They have just been in slavery for generations after generations, just stuck in Egypt, stuck under the iron. I would say the iron fist or the iron thumb of the Pharaoh, and that he won't let them go. And then, like, Moses comes along, challenges the Pharaoh, goes off into the desert, has a nice encounter with God that comes back and says, "Hey, you need to let these people go." And the more and more that the Pharaoh doesn't release his grasp on the Egyptians, that the more catastrophe that God starts to strike against the city and starts to strike against the Pharaoh and strikes against the people in Egypt. Still, the Pharaoh does not budge at all, and so Moses is like, you know what, I'm just going to take the people myself. I'm going to deliver these people myself. Pharaoh ends after them, then God starts to intervene some more, and then Pharaoh ends up just going back to Egypt as he's pretty much lost the battle. And then they, all the Egyptians gather in, like, the new state of Israel, where they gather in their own new group, and Moses gets the new Ten Commandments for all of them to live by in this new group, and they basically stick together as their new clan. And basically the story, at least biblically and historically, continues past the movie, but pretty much wraps itself up right with their new colony together.
That's right.
Freed outside of Egypt.
That's right.
So, after seeing this movie for the first time myself, it's a really big movie. It's this historical epic, essentially, is what the Ten Commandments is all about. And I can totally feel just the grand scale, really big movie. I read online, I think, 14,000 extras and 18,000 animals. I would say at least more than that, because there are just wide stretches of frames that are completely filled with people, completely filled with all these Egyptians, and completely filled with all of these livestock and animals. It almost kind of felt like I was watching Lord of the Rings again.
Oh, yeah. They usually don't make movies like that anymore, where it's like almost 4 hours long.
I mean, they made movies like that way back then. Like in the 30s or 40s, like 3 or 4 hours was about the standard. Then we started to cut it down to what we do now. But
I think 3 hours is the minimum nowadays.
You've seen this movie quite a few times yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right. When I was, it was often one of our family favorites that we would watch. Usually during the holidays, because they usually television like ABC or whatever would often show Ten Commandments for the holidays. Like for Easter or for Christmas or something. They'd be one of the biblical movies that they would show.
Right.
And me and my family grew up, like watching it. I think it's interesting that you were saying about the, where it's long, but it really dives deep into the characters.
Exactly.
One of the things I was studying it, this time when I was watching it was...
I just noticed all kinds of notes. So if you just want to go into that.
Yeah, I'll go into that. One of the biggest thing I was paying attention to the most was the character arc of Moses. You could see that he really lives the life as an Egyptian, really trying to follow orders, trying to be like kind of competing with his own brother. And really trying to
and that's after he was discovered as a baby.
After he discovered as a baby. Right. That he's really he tends to be more helpful to the Hebrew slaves, and he also tends to treat them like they're people. Like, for example, his what would eventually be revealed that is his mom, her hair or something gets trapped onto the thing with the stone wall.
The stone is being moved on.
And once the word was given out to Moses, he a lot of people are like they were not listening to the slaves. They just want to get the work done and not care that she gets crushed and stuff. Well, he's the only one that actually goes to help her. The other
he's not like one of the slaves who are just trying to do their job. He actually steps in and tries to help somebody else.
He helps her, and he immediately becomes the one that we like the most. Then it's not until after he discovers his identity that he really isn't an Egyptian, that really his real heritage is that he was a Hebrew.
Yes.
That he starts to really get into his identity. He really seems to kind of accept it, somewhat. And even though he's living that life as an Egyptian, he then decides to kind of
bring his origins in,
and then he gets exiled from them, and then goes out in the desert. Encounters the burning bush.
His first encounter.
Yeah, his first encounter that he starts to learn.
This is my role. This is what I need to do for him, and then all of these orders are totally real, and it's something that I, as Moses, have to follow through with.
Yeah, he learns he finally learns, and and hears the voice of God.
That's the turning point. That's his character.
That's the turning point,
right? Which
comes to the end and gets to the intermission, and then gets to the second part. So he does finally not only accept who he is as a Hebrew, but accepts that he is the man of God.
Yeah, I definitely felt that throughout the movie that this story was very much structured in a one, 2, and 3 act kind of story structure. And I kept thinking back to as a true story and as like a written to the screen kind of format, and written to the screen as a story structure format. The things in real life seemingly happen at random, where you'll have this goal and you'll like randomly stumble upon things that help you get to that goal, and it's a little bit less structured in real life, which this story is basically based off of. And then this movie comes in and adapts that reality and adapts that realistic story into this cognitive and comprehensive story structure. Then we see, so his character is over here, and then he's going to come to this next turning point in the story, and this story is going to make him face off, or make the villain chase after the hero as he's trying to free all these people, and the villain's going to keep chasing him, and the villain's going to stand strong with, no, those are my people, and the Moses is going to be like, no, I'm going to lead them out, as they're still leading their own goals, or as they're still following their own goals, and the story just jumps from step to step to step. And I just found it interesting that it followed that kind of structure when like reality is a little less comprehensive than that tends to be. But it was interesting to see how each step played out, and it's based off a true story. And
the film is interesting in a lot of ways, where it does explore where it's a classic story that is being told, and that fits today's society and throughout history, really, that I thought was very interesting that they brought up. There was even an introduction in the beginning where the director was talking about it's more than just a biblical story that they were portraying. It was actually trying to tell a story that would fit all of society, all of people, throughout history.
The theme of this picture is whether men are to be ruled by God's law, or whether they are to be ruled by the whims of a dictator like Ramesses. Are men the property of the state, or are they free souls under God? This same battle continues throughout the world today.
That I think was interesting. If you really go learn in history, a lot of things reflect that has happened in the Moses story. That I thought was very interesting. Example: Abraham Lincoln could be seen as Moses
there
type,
you go, freeing the slaves from
or Oscar Schindler from Schindler's List,
freeing the Jews.
Yeah, exactly. I was also studying the Pharaoh's character. It's kind of interesting that you see the opposite side, where he's often representative of just wanting power, everything for himself, the glory, and the nice clothes that they present in the films. That kind of represents people,
just the great power and the grandness, and don't touch me, you're dirty. I am
the reward.
Crystal clean here, and you are to serve me.
Yeah, exactly. That's again another thing that they explore that still goes on today, that throughout history,
that people will use their glitter, their makeup, clothes, the technology, all of these grand things just to make themselves look cool or popular, and all this stuff.
Even though we may not be in those days, it's in many different
many different ways, in different cultures, in our own American culture.
That's right. Yeah, it's everywhere. Rich versus the poor, kind of a thing.
The movie, especially in the first half of the entire movie, it really nailed down how grand and how huge their architecture is throughout the country. That they have thousands upon thousands of slaves just digging at it, so just to build up these big architectures that ultimately they're just going to die doing. But the Pharaoh just keeps ordering them, scene after scene after scene. They're dressed up in their glory, and they're looking great, and they have all this power, and the movie just hammers them right into the center of the society.
That's right.
And so it establishes the villain very firmly.
Yeah, definitely. he even sort of kind of accepts it at the end, where after his men drowned into the water when the water collapsed. So, he then goes back to Egypt, where his wife was expecting him to have the blood on the sword, but then
he couldn't even touch Moses.
Yeah, he couldn't even touch Moses, and she notices that too. Even makes a comment about it, and he pretty much last thing he says is God. Is God.
Like, okay, he is what he says he is, I guess.
And then it ends it from there in their story.
I do have just like one slight complaint. I think there's some slower scenes, especially with the female characters and especially with the women, where like Moses might come in to visit with this lady, or I don't know, somebody in power might visit a female character like privately in the room or something, and we just spend like one scene out of every like 3 or 4 or so privately between like this guy and this female character, and Moses with this female character just once in a while, and they're just talking about love or talking about relationships or how they can't get married or how they may or may not love each other, things like that. And I think those were like the primary or the only like slowing down points in the story and the points I didn't really care about, and it made me care less about these female characters. And then I can understand them, I suppose, as like the supporting characters. Otherwise it takes a little too much time on each of these characters and in these scenes, and those were really the only slowing down, the major slowing down points for the movie for me. The kind
of flaws and complaints. It's interesting you brought it up too, because that was another thing I was taking notes on. I mean, it's not really complaints I have. It's just something I was thinking in the mind of those who, like, say, wouldn't be into the old school style of filmmaking. I kind of did notice that, like, for example, the writing. I think the dialogue, I mean, I would understand that.
The dialogue is very Shakespearean.
Yeah, very Shakespearean. It's not something that most people would talk in real life, today.
Just kind of poetic and reminiscing.
Yeah, but at the same time, it could be the way people talked that back then, except they would probably speak in different ancient languages.
Yeah, the ancient dialects. I think it was also really reflecting like the broad theatrical stage style of the whole movie. As it was mostly like camera set and then like one takes over and over, scene by scene. That felt very theatrical and that felt Shakespearean. Also
exactly. That's exactly what I put down in my notes. You pretty much already said. Actually, the way the editing is back then, they didn't have like the fast cuts editing like you would see in
the editing and the camera setups are pretty standard and
very
pretty basic.
Standard, very basic. Yeah, it definitely has a lot of this nostalgic style in cinema that if people who like that kind of style would definitely find appealing.
I think people appealing. Yes, people who enjoy that kind of old schoolish pre 21st century, even pre mid 20th century will probably enjoy this movie.
Yeah, and production design and the costume design, they definitely shows, definitely
everywhere.
Yeah, it definitely
all
shows
the extras, all the animals.
Yeah, it's very well crafted. I mean, I think one thing that could be said that the sets, they're well done, but some of it does kind of feel like you are in a backlot set.
A little bit.
Visually how Ten Commandments holds, still
visually phenomenal.
Yeah, visually phenomenal, definitely. Yeah, definitely the Lord of the Rings of its time.
But yeah, otherwise, great big production scale. I think they invested like practically everything that they could into this gigantic movie to create this gigantic story and just surround us with here's the Egyptian life, here's the Egyptian town and all the people who make it up, and here's the Pharaoh and just the grand power that he has and the grand influence that he has on our story. Well acted and just a very well realized and well just crafted production wise. And suits families and suits people who would be interested in the themes and the context. Would you rate this with anything?
Yeah, I would. I have my own rating scale I'd give.
Go ahead.
I give it 5 stars, the amazing rating.
Cool.
Yep. Out of 5.
I would give it an A.
An A.
Why not?
A's for amazing.
A's for amazing.
That's right.
So, thanks for joining us for this review of 10 Commandments, and thank you for joining us, TJ.
Thank you very much.
Very cool and having you come to this video, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want to do a zoom again? Did you want to shout zoom, do your signature zoom into the camera as does it?
Are you ready? Let me know if you're zooming. Okay.
Okay, ready, set, go.
Zoom! Let's do it again.
Ready, set, go.
Zoom! I want to do that again.
Ready, set, go.
Zoom!
Okay, you're having way too much fun. We're done. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot to mention, I do love Zooms. Nobody does, but I do. I love Zooms.
You still hooked on the Zooms.
Yeah, I love the Zooms. I like that. That's the only nostalgic thing that
only
I
nostalgic.
love in movies, and always will.
Post your comments below about what you think about his style or what you think about Zooms. Are they out of fashion?
No, they're not.
He thinks they are not.
Not in my world.
Not in his real.
That's right.